We are live
We are live.
to Wake Up and Deliver, Season 2, Episode 12. Good morning, everybody that's tuned in. As always, thank you for everybody listening in and joining us weekly. We're ready to go, as always. We're going to start off with John's reactions to my wonderful quotes that I have. And then, as always, we're going to have a great conversation on things that are happening in the logistical world. Just to prep everybody's attention this morning, John's already a little bit fired up. He's ready. He has a few topics that have him completely, I don't know, engulfed with rage on it.
Wow. So Matt's also way overselling that. So someone's going to be disappointed later. But yeah.
Well, we got to make the show viral, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. You got to have that suspense.
Quote reaction. When we lack real problems, we create imaginary ones. When we lack meaningful work, we perfect the unimportant.
I've never really heard anything like this one before. I think that's kind of interesting, that one for sure. I definitely agree with like the problem aspect, right? Like I think that is essentially what a lot of organizations end up dealing with, right? They're kind of humming along, they're doing pretty well, they're getting their year over year, and they kind of stagnate because like they don't have any real problems. And then when something really comes up, they don't have like either the culture or the people or whatever to really tackle it, because they've been in this mode of like not really having real problems, so not really having a lot of like that innovative fire within them.
I think you also seen in employees when they don't have tasks or problems to work on, they'll create busy work. It adds nothing to anything. They just kind of sit there and scroll through social media and make it look like they're very
well
bent on something.
I think you can still treat mundane or like task oriented things as like an opportunity if you see it like a problem. I agree with you though in the sense of like when someone becomes just content going through the motions because like, oh, that's my job, that for sure gets into a pretty slow space.
John is very, very eager to talk about this topic. He has been ranting about all weekend, starting Friday. Like every 30 minutes, I've been getting texts on this topic. Like it's just crazy, people. Just crazy.
Well, I'm as interested as the people to figure it out. Oh, that you're bringing up the Tesla stuff. Okay.
I thought that's what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, but you went into the weekend, so then I was like, okay, well, now what?
I was trying to add a little bit of pizzazz to it.
Oh yeah.
I'm faking it till I'm making it because I feel a little bit under the weather, so I'm trying to get my energy up to kind of start the day right, manifest my positivity today.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So, let's jump into this as a bit of an example. So I made a post, I don't know, the other day. Let's call it like Friday, Saturday. I don't really know when it was. And I reposted a picture that came from social media of someone showing a pretty serious panel coming off of their Cybertruck. Like in the rear compartment or whatever, in the back. And just so happened that Tesla also made a recall for another sort of panel coming off where they're like, hey, we basically used the wrong glue. We used a bad glue and we're gonna fix it by putting on a better glue. Like, which to me, I even thought was like, wow, okay. Now in all fairness, like the actual image in the post is very different than the specific recall. But I mean, there's a couple of things that were important about it. First, that Tesla's had 8 recalls already on the Cybertruck. There's been a number of issues around people who have bought the Cybertruck as a truck, and then finding out when they go to tow someone, it rips the bumper off. This panel came off the backside, and people were really concerned with like the fact that there was no real like frame, right? Like even in an F-150 or something like that, like the actual crew compartment and the cab is like sort of aerospace engineered military grade aluminum. Like it's got some like real substance to it, right? And the Cybertruck's a very different construction. Now, I say in the post 100% that I'm sure the design is sound. Like I'm not actually trying to be a structural engineer, like not my bag. Anyways, this post took off sometime yesterday, and it's just been going crazy ever since. And unfortunately, every time a post goes viral, it brings out a lot of people, interesting people, wide range of people. And there was even a comment this morning about people saying like, oh, posting this is terrible. It's not really about the recall itself. And this is kind of just like clickbait, essentially. Like, okay, fine. I think like fair position if you want to make that comment. My retort though to this person, and what I think is important for anyone that's, whether it's a service or whether it's a product that you're putting out there, if this is what starts going around social media, if this is the type of information that is going to kind of like purple cow people and like stop them in their tracks, you're going to do yourself no favors by just being like, oh, that's not accurate. And that person doesn't know what they're talking about. Because while that could be true, if this is the type of material or content that is floating around on social media, and if it is influencing customer sentiment about your product, about your brand, about your service, you 100% should be knowing about it, should be able to address it, should be thinking about how to, whether it's damage control or how to fix this problem, because that is what people are saying. Now, unfortunately, Tesla and Elon Musk is becoming very polarizing because of his connection to the US government and stuff like that. And a lot of people are kind of all over the place with boycotts. But I also shared something in my newsletter the other day about Kim Kardashian doing a promo for a Tesla with the current sentiment about Tesla, and now how it could potentially impact like the Skims collaboration with Nike. Now, people can say as much as they like that these things shouldn't matter, they shouldn't be connected, but we're in a world with like fast information, people taking very strong stances and really liking that divide of I'm either in camp A or B, despite the fallacy of the thinking. I don't believe anyone benefits from pretending these things are not true. I really just, anyways, that's kind of.
I'm going to segue you off here a little bit, because I want to, not that it's not an important thing talking about social media and how it connects us to what we're doing, but on that topic, I'd like to talk about it in a different perspective.
Yeah.
More so, how much of these automakers' supply chains or reliability depends on their supply chain, right? And I found this interesting. I don't know if you've seen this before. This is this year's most reliable vehicles now, and the reason some of these are at the bottom, like I was surprised VW is at the bottom, is not because the parts are not reliable. It's not because of the technology is not reliable. And it kind of plays into what you're talking about, like your perception, your image, and whatnot. The car could be completely sound. All the parts could be getting the parts how you need them. But if the technology, the interfaces that you're using, that perception that you're dealing with all the time is not sound, it can throw you off, because VW used to be one of the top 10 most reliable vehicles. What's at the very bottom below Chrysler and Jeep. And even Audi, their premium brand, is down there. When I saw this, I was kind of taken aback. And seeing Buick as number 2 really surprised me as well. Because I mean, I guess older people driving Buicks don't usually interface with the technology as much as.
But this is. But this thing that you're showing here, sorry, because like it's smaller for everyone looking at it. So just like highlight, like what are we seeing here? Like is lower is better or what?
No, the 31 at the very bottom is very unreliable. And then at the very top, Lexus being the most reliable vehicle there is. Should I zoom in more?
Yeah, try to zoom in, because it's like it kind of gives this perception that it's like.
Is that better?
Yeah, but like so it's got Lexus at a score of like 140. So lower is better.
Yes.
Okay. And what are they? Oh, problems. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like perceived problems, customer sentiment, like all of these things just keep adding up. And this is, to your point, then bringing it back to what we normally, just really talk about and stuff like that. This is your operations. This is your execution. This is your like first time right. Like these are your processes. Like these are all of the things that you should be doing or that you are doing every day. that contribute to this, right? Like people think that, oh, if the product is good, it'll just sell, right? But how, like, look at even like Mercedes, like look at how like where that's their 24th or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, you walk into a Mercedes dealership, they're going to make you think that like you should just be blessed to walk in. So
to your point, Tesla is moved up. So it was 250. Now it's at 209. So they are moving up as becoming more and more reliable as a brand in general, right? So there are parts and whatnot, but I'm sure that next year with all the issues they're having, it's going to drop the other way.
Yeah, I think, like I said, at the end of the day, the commentary is not about whether or not, like, I'm making no judgment. I've never driven a Tesla. I've never been like, never owned one. So I'm not trying to say that they're good or bad vehicles, but like any product or service, you have to be aware of what customers are starting to feel about your brand. Because like now Tesla's big enough that it's probably not going to get out of control. But if you're a small brand, if you're a medium-sized brand, that can start to have a massive impact, right? And then again, like let's go back to supply chain. So let's say customer sentiment changes. All of a sudden I'm selling my product. All of a sudden my velocity of sales slow down, which means my costs are going up because now I'm storing more inventory and product. Maybe I've already bought my next batch or whatever from the manufacturer. It's already in the queue. I've already paid for it, whatever. Like these types of things have very real world implications for the overall health of your business. So bottom line is that I don't think anyone should ever ignore anything that's being said, especially on social media these days, because everybody loves to share the wild, right? Matt shares the wild stuff with me all the time. All the videos he sends me, like I think every time he's like, this is wild. And that's the comment that comes with it.
It is pretty wild. Some of the stuff that we talk about in the background, it is pretty wild. Like just some of the AI stuff, some of the robotics, some of the things that are happening, and the velocity of it happening is absolutely crazy. But what I was going to segue into a pet peeve of mine, which occurred to me over the weekend, is business and technology is moving up like this. Like it's sheer quickly, everything is moving in that direction, right? I feel like the government's responses to all this is still very much at this level. And the reason I say that is, one of my biggest pet peeves that I have to deal with all the time is customs. And when we have protein coming across the border, so chicken, meat, beef, pork, tofu, not tofu, but any other kind of protein that you have, when it comes across the border, there's a lag time when it comes into Canada. And that's one thing that I think that the Canadian overall system, and I'm hoping that the funds that they're putting into, not just border security, but into the government, that they can speed up the processes of how quickly things get processed. Because a lot of the times it's just sitting for someone to look over the paperwork. And then at this point, it should be really automated. There is AI that reads majority of it and should be able to flag the good and the bad and have it kind of sorted out. But I don't see, even going southbound or northbound, I don't see that being resolved for the next 5-6 years as the government kind of gets into this aspect of it, which would ease everybody else's lives, as business will be then 10 times further. And to that point, it's the same thing when you talk about China and India and all these other places, how they're 10 times already further ahead of us in a lot of these challenges, and have already made a way to make it process quicker. And I see we have some comments in there from Bill.
Oh yeah, I agree. Actually, the one thing what I love about seeing in the comments right now is that Bill especially is like, oh, I would challenge this, and I think that is the mentality that so many people should have, and I think it's actually a bit of the dangerous mentality as part of what I'm saying is that too many people these days aren't challenging what they see. It is extremely easy these days to put a level of polish on a website, a post, an infographic, or whatever you have, and make it look really professional. And I don't think enough people like really realize this this transference kind of concept that happens. It's like a cognitive bias, like, oh, like it looks really good, so it must be good.
It looks professional now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Therefore, it's professional.
Exactly. And I think that's another thing that's lost is that there isn't enough people challenging information, which kind of doubles down on the fact that why then you can't just ignore what particular sentiment is on any given topic. So I think that that's pretty interesting. Anyways, like I said, viral post kind of stuff that always ends up creeping up. It gets off the rails because people.
I'm gonna laugh because on my StreamYard studio, I don't see some of the people's name. I see Bill. There's a LinkedIn user. It says, I know gas is expensive, but I don't like electric. I will almost bet somebody that's Kat making that.
No, that's Paul. It's Paul.
Is it Paul?
Paul
Oh man,
yeah.
because she rented an electric car a few months ago, and she had the worst experience. And she was like, "No, never again." They're not, the infrastructure is not there. Anyways, I thought that was fun.
Okay. So I got another one now. I'm going to surprise you. You're not ready.
Are you going to ignore my customs comment that I made?
Oh, sorry. No, I don't. I do think that it's going to be a huge issue, right? Because I think especially too, what you're seeing is that there's so much information talking about, the number of, let's call it entrepreneurs or small businesses that are going to kind of take over in the next 10 years, right? Or that are going to pop up in the next 10 years, which means that you're going to have more and more fragmentation. So I agree with you in the sense that business is becoming very fast and fluid and capable. It'll lean into my next thing after. But you're right. They're not keeping up with the fact of like, well, what do you do when it's not 1,000 businesses, it's 10,000 that you're interacting with, or it's 150,000. Like I agree with you 100% that, there needs to be some real mindful and intentional design around how do you build systems that are going to continue to fragment and most likely fragment much more quickly.
And the infrastructure to be able to support all that, the warehousing, the inspection sites, all this stuff that helps speed the velocity of business to be able to enter and be able to connect us to the products quicker. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for, we were called an election here in Canada. It's going to be a very contentious one. I think that should be a topic that everybody should be asking their elected representatives is more for our infrastructure as a whole as a country, whether it's the pipeline, whether it's roads, whether it's railways, whatever it is. How do we help enhance the ability to get more goods into Canada and to the United States as seamless as possible?
Yeah, for sure. Even with the talk now, because of like the tariffs and stuff like that, and it becoming a big election topic about free trade within Canada, just means that more stuff's going to want to move. You're going to have to make it faster. You're going to have, you know what I mean? Like, what are you going to put in place to really make sure that, things happen the way that they should, that there isn't like abuse or whatever, but then you're also not creating barriers or systems to make people still feel like it's not worth it.
Exactly. A way to think about it is, hey, maybe the tariffs did go up, but maybe there's a way to bring the whole system so it's cheaper and quicker to help reduce that pain for everybody that's involved, right? And help support the whole system in that function. Anyways, you had a topic that you wanted to get across.
Because this can be an extension. There can be an extension of this one when you're talking about, the growth of small business and stuff. So I saw a post this morning across my feed, and I sent a message to the founder or to the owner of the business, and she was very gracious in answering my questions. But she's a person, and I would say I'll say very well. I think it's absurd that people will say that businesses with X amount of revenue aren't strong enough or whatever. She's doing a few $1 million in revenue, right? About 20% margins. She works alone. Her business and all of her product is just her. She sells on Amazon, and that's what she's doing. She wasn't bragging or anything like that. And I messaged her and I said, hey, that's awesome. Like, I think that that's great. And, I think the fact that people can go out and essentially generate, multi-$100,000 a year salaries for themselves without any work is wild and phenomenal. And like nothing but congratulations and kudos for everything that you've achieved. But then at the same time, I was like, but how are you so sure that like the 20% margin is like the right amount? Right. And that you're not leaving stuff on the table. You and I know, like in the sense of transportation, logistics, like, whether it's delivery, middle mile, whether it's warehousing, all of these things are, they like these cents and dollars all really start to add up. And she basically was like, I don't really know, honestly, how much could be there. And but she took the position of like, I make enough and I don't, it's not an issue for me, which I respect as an answer. I think that that's a very valid answer. The only thing I kind of put back though is like, I think that's great. And I actually agree with you. I think that people feeling like, oh, I, if I'm not making, like Mr. Beast, I said to my kids the other day, I have no idea why Mr. Beast continues to work. If I had his level of success, I'd just be like on a private island. Like I'd be done. I would not be remotely still trying to generate more revenue by coming out with peanut butter cups and stuff like this. Not say like, hey, that's his own ambition. And people like Bezos, and same thing. He was a billionaire at 30 years old. But like the point being is that I don't think it's necessarily the idea of like greed about saying, hey, you should look at these things because you'll make more money, and making more money is always better. But it's more about like, you don't want to wait until there's a problem, i.e. a competitor in the market, a big change to tariffs, or like some real impactor that then starts to take away from that, let's call it 3, 4, 500,000 salary you've been able to generate for yourself. And now all of a sudden starts taking away from potentially the life that you've built.
But how do you know?
Before you should address it.
How do you know that though? Like I mean, put yourself in the individual shoes, and they're very fantastic at making this product. They found a niche of how to make this work for them. You are aware of all the background efficiencies that you could potentially grab and take a hold of. But if you don't know, like if you don't have a knowledge about logistics or warehousing, and then you get the price, like how do you know that you can make it more efficient?
No, but that's to my point, right? And I'm not saying that everybody should bring on employees and stuff like that, but it was more like the curiosity of being like, hey, you are in this position, you have the opportunity. The reality is this person most likely has enough flexibility in the money that they make that they could, whether they want to invest in it themselves and take the time, whether they want to hire someone like me, like you, like a more established firm, like bigger firm, whatever. Like there's opportunities there to like, hey, I want to get the answer to this question. Like, you know what I mean? To understand, because again, to me, it's more like what happens if you've never looked at it, and waiting until there's a fire to start building the fire suppression system feels like a risk. And I was curious about the mentality.
I'll give you a personal experience. I mean, we're quite busy right now, which is great, fantastic. And I know there's a lot of things in the background that I could have fire suppression and do, but I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? And unless I stop what I'm doing, which is my day-to-day to focus and keeping everything in line, it's hard to understand what's happening in the periphery. I know the immediate fire within the next, 5 to 7 days, everything is taken care of. But I don't have the ability yet to go and look at the 3-month and the 6-month and the further out. And especially if you're a one-person show, you have really narrowed your focus and your view on that. So if they're very busy, I can't imagine someone who's making that kind of dollars is only working 3-4 hours a day. They must be very engulfed in their business. I can't see them seeing it unless it becomes a problem. Like I don't focus on things unless it starts becoming a little bit of a problem. Like there has to be something that antagonizes the system for me.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's true. I'll push back on you more from some of our conversations without obviously getting into the deeper details. But like we've had conversations about understanding, like for example, like the market context, potential pressures that could come in the market, the way that prices are fluctuating, and like at some point you become like you're aware of the fact that like, hey, if my margin goes from X to Y, and I know I have either these responsibilities or I have these commitments, like something is going to get tighter and stuff like that, right? So I would just offer, even from the fact that like you've messaged me and been like, hey, this thing is causing a problem, like this or that, like whatever, and just getting feedback, right? Because you have that access. Like you have access to people that can at least give you some kind of like sense check of like, oh, well, no, that's probably not this, or maybe look here or do that. I'm saying for people that like, have come up in this e-commerce, especially, right? This direct to consumer type product stuff or whatever, or services. Like I know someone that was just working super hard, but they got themselves stuck in a rat race of like, they couldn't catch up on the billing, and they were spending X amount of hours, like way too many hours a week doing billing and invoicing. And then because they were doing that, they were like working way more hours per day. Like at some point, and this is something I used to always say to my teams, like when we were doing process improvement or projects or any kind of change, even in the corporate world, is that there's never going to be like a good time to like tackle these problems, right? Because like you know, it's not going to go away. If you keep working the way that you are, it's never going to go away. And you're never going to really have enough space to really just, when things calm down, and tackle it. So the best thing you can do is just force it, either by yourself putting in more time, or having additional resources, or finding a way to change something to get it resolved, because it's most likely only going to get worse as you scale, or as you get bigger, or whatever. So it's just one of those things that my point to this person, especially as a small brand, it would be something that I would offer any smaller brands out there, is that you're not necessarily looking at these things because you want to be more greedy, or you're not satisfied with your margins today. But it's like, don't wait until you have problems, or there's some kind of issue, to then start looking at it, because then the stress and the pressure of trying to deal with it while you're bleeding makes it way worse. It just makes it way, way worse. You know what I mean? And you should only do that if you absolutely have to.
I think part of it is also the network that you keep as well, right? If you have a diverse network with people with different levels of what you're doing, you will have knowledge of it. Or if you just do your own research on it, you kind of do a basic understanding of it, you can have an understanding of, should I be looking further into this topic, or shouldn't I be looking further into this topic? And and I think that's what kind of drives a lot of people to make those changes, right? It's just sometimes it's just a lack of understanding. There could be something better. We've talked to customers that been using the big couriers for the longest time. They didn't know there was an ability to use something outside of that system, because for the longest time the big couriers held a dominance of deliveries. And until you kind of put that information out there, you talk to them and you expose them to the wider network, and they come out of their bubble, that they go, oh, there's different solutions that can have better impact on my business. And that's when they start kind of picking at it and growing to it. So I think to your point, what we're both kind of saying is, you should always be itching and having conversations to see, do you need to scratch that itch, or shouldn't you? And what I mean by that is have you learned something that makes you think, I could do this better to enhance my ability to sustain a outside force that's going to impact my business in the coming weeks? And that's just based off of just constantly being in touch and communicating with the wider network that connects you to your business.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Like, you know what I mean? Like but again, I guess I would just offer that back, is that in some way, shape, or form, then you're having feedback on these issues, as opposed to no feedback on the issues. You know what I mean? Or not even thinking about them, or making an assumption about what there's no way X. It's like, well, but you don't know.
Like, well, you should be out there, part of the communities, and chatting with people that are at least on the periphery of that aspect of it, right? Like, we don't do a crap ton of warehousing, but I have warehouse people that I talk to all the time, that I know what's going on in the warehousing world, to understand that, hey, this could be done better. Same as the different, like you were talking about the custom invoicing. I know on the periphery, there's companies out there that are solving these problems and working on it to make them better. But you have to be connected to that community to be able to get there. But to be respectful of everybody's time, we're at that time, John. If you want to summarize some of those comments that we have from people, because we had a very active audience today, and maybe kind of put some words of wisdom, as you always do at the end of our show. Take it away, John.
No, I think everyone appreciated. There was some discussion, obviously, about the cars and the quality and stuff like that. But again, I think honestly, it just fit in well to the overall theme, which is like, your customers have opinions, they have sentiments, they're sharing things about your brand, about your service with their peers, their social networks, whatever it can be. So I just think that it's always good practice for people to be aware of everything, and to not minimize the potential impact of anything just because of the fact that the perception on what's being said might be really out of context, because that's fine up until the point that it becomes too popular, or too many people start thinking it for it to be an issue. Right. So that's, that's one thing that I would say. And then on the flip side, on to our other discussion, we're in a world where, like, everything matters, the details matter. And I don't see enough value for anyone to not check and just assume, I guess, would be my words of wisdom to start the week.
I'll let that one hang for a bit. On that note, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Hope to catch you guys next week. As always, we'll have something fun to talk about, something more, not more entertaining, as entertaining as it always is. If any there's ever suggestions, please do let us know. All right. Bye, guys.